explanation about the Chernobyl accident in 1986.
Okay, so the Chernobyl accident happened in the Chernobyl power complex in Ukraine on April 26, 1986. It happened because during a shutdown to perform routine maintenance on reactor number 4, operators disabled plant equipment, including the automatic shutdown mechanisms, so a sudden surge of power destroyed the 4th nuclear station unit. This released massive amounts of radiation into the environment. To counteract the disaster, emergency crews poured sand over the debris to stop the fire and boron to stop further nuclear reactions. The other 3 reactors were restarted but then shut off completely for safety. Also, the area within 30 kilometers of the affected area were shut off. After the accident, the radiation effects killed 28 people during the first 4 months, and another 106 received acute radiation sickness. The areas of Belarus, the Russian Federation, and Ukraine were affected, with at least 5 million residents. And the health consequences include radiation-induced leukemia and malformations in animals and people, and loss of vegetation.
Between May and November of 1986, the object shelter was built to contain the radioactive waste. Since then, it has contained a certain amount of radiation, yet not as much as it could. Therefore, they are now constructing the new safe confinement that has as a goal to prevent the reactor complex from leaking more radioactive material into the environment, so that in the future the old structure, object shelter, can be demolished.
Nuclear energy is extremely dangerous due to the fact that its consequences can cause cancer, genetic mutations, and the waste is deadly. The waste is known as uranium, and even though the nuclear plants require very little amounts of it, there is no way of disposing it.
The heat a nuclear plant uses is with uranium atoms, which then turn water into steam, generating electricity. Fission occurs when uranium atoms split. When a nuclear reaction happens, uranium atoms split and release neutrons. Actually, in 2009, the president of Ukraine said that it was a priority to repopulate affected areas in Belarus and Chernobyl zone.
In 2011, Chernobyl was declared an official tourist attraction and received many visitors. A few years later, in 2015, our research demonstrated that mammals that live in that area were thriving despite land contamination caused by the accident.
The radioactive debris has been cleaned out completely, but normally cannot be neutralized, so it is stored around the world in special facilities. One example of exponential growth could be the reproduction of bacteria.
Suppose you place 100 bacteria into a petri dish with favorable conditions, and after 6 hours, the population has grown into 450. This represents an exponential growth, as you can see here. An example of exponential decay would be the atmospheric pressure in different altitudes. The pressure drops by 12% for every 1,000 meters you climb. At sea level, the pressure is about 1,013 hectopascals. So the higher you go, the lower the pressure will be. This can be shown in the following graph.
Exponential growth or exponential decay is any quantity that increases or decreases by a fixed percent of intervals. Its reference point is 0,1. Its domain is infinite and its range varies.
Here is the equation for the exponential growth. Here is the graph for exponential growth. Now here is the equation for exponential decay. And the following will be the graph for exponential decay. Nuclear energy is considered to have a small impact on the environment due to the fact that it does not emit air pollution and therefore it does not affect greenhouse gases. Nuclear energy is considered clean energy because it saves a big amount of carbon dioxide. Moreover, the problem surges when a nuclear plant explodes and releases radiation that affects immensely the citizens, and then, as a result, it does impact the environment.
We could smile, we should smile together, all smile forever.
This Chernobyl disaster could have been prevented if the workers would have been perfectly trained and completely informed of how the generators worked. Also, if the security system in this nuclear power plant had been perfectly executed, this problem would not have been able to happen.
And also, once the explosion happened, yes, distance and shielding reduces the radiation dose to people from the denotation of a nuclear explosive. We don't think that radiation pollution could have reached Mexico, since facts state that it spread over much of the Western USSR and Europe. Some consequences in a global scale that the Chernobyl disaster caused were: first, it released 85 petabecquerels of radioactive cesium. The Chernobyl 4 reactor contained about 190 metric tons of uranium dioxide fuel and fission products. An estimated 13% to 30% of this escaped into the atmosphere. A large swath of pine forest called red forest was killed by acute radiation. And also, some children in the contaminated areas were exposed to high radiation doses, up to 50 gray.
The consequences of nuclear disasters is that the waste that is produced usually ends in the ocean or soil. Moreover, the access to clean water can be affected by the waste generated. Other effects of these nuclear weapons is the radiation that ends up injuring current generations and future generations, because it will take a very long time in order to eradicate it. It can cause malnutrition, diarrhea, vomiting, and in the long run, cancer.
It has also been stated that there is a genetic damage not only in human life, but also in animals and plants. Other substances like uranium, mercury, strontium, among others, are carcinogenic. We think that these consequences are extremely dangerous and have many side effects. These consequences don't only affect humans, but the whole planet. It affects everything that surrounds us, including nature. So, we think that these consequences should be prevented at all costs. We think that a solution proposal for this situation is to reinforce the nuclear power plant security and to lower the fabrication and usage of dangerous nuclear energy and particles. This should be taken very seriously and with precaution.
We think this project was more about learning about the disaster itself, knowing what happened in Chernobyl, and even though we probably heard about it, we believe that understanding how a nuclear explosion occurs and why, then we can for sure conclude that it damages people's lives.
The exponential functions and the examples of growth and decay clearly show how much this disaster affected, and how over the years this country has become a tourist place. What we liked from working with each other was that we definitely cooperated what we knew and researched individually and then shared it. We completed each other's ideas.
Time for crazy action.